people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8, has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness.
And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. Let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning were the second day.
God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.
A couple of years ago, I was asked to do a Bible study group. I'm thinking Catholics don't do Bible studies, you know. And to do a Bible study group in Houston. I'm going, Catholics definitely don't do Bible studies in Texas. To do a Bible study group in Houston with a bunch of astronauts. Astronauts, oh, I could do that, yeah. So I wound up at a dinner evening of about 12 couples, all of them astronauts and spouses. One of the guys, half of them were Catholic as it turns out, so much for Catholics not doing Bible studies. One of the guys came up to me and said, "You know, I just want to let you know, I believe in the absolute truth that creation was made in the 6 days just as described in the book of Genesis. And that's my religion. I just want to let you know that ahead of time." And I'm thinking, you know, have you actually read Genesis? Where it says the world is flat and it's covered with a dome and there's water above and below the dome, you know. Where does the shuttle go? How come you don't get wet?
Now, one thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the earth. There's no place to go.
So we have the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, the Coast Guard. But we have the Air Force. Now we're going to have the Space Force because it's a whole.
We're flying so high, we're cracking the sky. Gonna fly out of this dome, my girlfriend and I.
I know we have still not shattered that highest and hardest glass ceiling, but someday someone will, and hopefully sooner than we might think right now.
Steroid Santa Claus kicks and deals. It's a long fly ball going back, and the ball shatters the sky, bringing the ocean itself down into the stadium.
Okay, you guys remember how I showed you the maps that were here on Earth before 1958, before the governments took them out? And I'm going to show you the Encyclopedia Britannicas in the public libraries before 1958. Here's volume 2 out of the alphabet A. And we're going to flip to the Antarctica, which, and this is from 1958, as you can see. Now, we're going to flip to the Antarctica and see what the Encyclopedia Britannica from 1958, before the Antarctic Treaty, says is there. Now, you won't find this in the new encyclopedias because the government's banned them. But what I want you to notice right here is, notice how it says the flights proved inland areas to be featureless in character with a dome 13,000 feet high at about latitude 80 degrees south, longitude 90 degrees east. Take a really close look at that. Now I'm going to zoom it in for you. When they returned to New Zealand, these flights proved the inland areas to be featureless in character with a dome 13,000 feet high at about latitude 80 degrees south, longitude 90 degrees east. Now, if this doesn't make sense to you, let me show you with an image of what a flat earth map would look like. Now, this is what latitude 80 degrees south would look like on a flat earth map. As you can see, the dome comes down closer to you over the wall, which will be about 13,000 feet. Now, if you go back out into the center of the earth, or up the North Pole, and try to go up to the firmament with a little bit of calculation, it's going to show that it's about 385,500 feet away. It's really simple, folks. Now, if you're not familiar with any of this at all, and you're just now new to all this, you can say, well, this guy is crazy, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But what you got to ask yourself is, why do all the maps before 1958 show a flat earth with the ice wall around it and a firmament, a dome? And why does the encyclopedia tell you that there's a dome there, and it gives you the exact height at a certain latitude and longitude? Well, the reason is because in 1958, that's when all governments and all nations of the world signed the UN treaty to ban all civilians from going to the Antarctica, and NASA came in and erased everything, just like they're erasing everything today. So again, ask yourself, if all this existed before 1958, why doesn't it exist now? How come it all of a sudden was erased and just disappeared out of your history books, out of your encyclopedias, out of your libraries? Wake up, people. Wake up.
Look at the little penguins. Now, the only time we get to see them is if we go to a zoo or a refuge or a theme park, because they hail from here. You know, the no-no place. Now, they can only be found in the southern hemisphere, which makes sense because that's where the no-no place is. But did you know they can be found in South America, South Africa, the Galapagos Islands, Australia? Now, scientists say that they are found in these places because of either they were pulled onto fishing boats, taken for scientific reasons, or they swam because they can't fly. But the thing is, scientists also say that these little guys will only travel approximately 600 miles away from their nest, which then entails going back. So this one could make sense to me. The Drake Passage is about 500 miles from Cape Horn to the Shetland Island. That's plausible. But when we go to where the penguins are normally seen in Africa, these two distances are like triple, quadruple up to South Africa. Same with Australia. Now, trying to find any actual distances between the no-no place and a place in a country is nearly impossible. You have to use a map. Now, on this map, it shows that Australia's territories in the no-no place are all on one side. That makes total sense. But when you look at the coordinates on these maps and compare them, something is just not adding up. What else doesn't add up is that these little animals that hail from the no-no place, where it's apparently cold as shit, find their way to these other countries, but not to the United States, Canada, Europe. Why are they only found here, here, there, and here? Look at this. Notice the wall Now take into account how far they can swim. Yep, that still makes sense. Now that makes sense. And now that makes sense. The 3 closest continents to the wall. They can't get anywhere else because they can't swim that far. I'm beginning to think that this isn't about endangered species and protecting nature. Just saying.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome!
The reason I would be doing that is because hell would have frozen over at WrestleMania. The seas would have parted, the earth would have spun on its axis, because only fools believe in miracles.
Whatever it is, it cut off all our roads.
Not just the roads, the whole town.
Our best guess puts the dome at 20,000 feet, sir.
Did he just call it a dome?
You think we might be stuck in here a while?
Should we tell him the truth? We're all in this together.
Why Chester's Mill? Why us?
Maybe we're being punished.
We're all on the same side.
Just see who your friends are and who isn't. I can't hear you.
Looks like we're stuck in a giant fishbowl. I used to have fish, but then one of them got sick, and the other one ate him.
An all-new episode of Under the Dome, featuring a special appearance by Bruce Willis.
Phil! I broke the dome.
Realize that we've been lied to about everything when it comes to space.
People wonder why I don't trust NASA. That's why I don't trust NASA. Everybody's trying to show you stuff from space and you keep rejecting it. This is why I reject it. These guys are liars.
Final frontier.
Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. How can we believe the world is not? I just can't conceive it. But the fool on the hill sees the sun going down, and the eyes in his head see the world spinning around. I know that I will never be politically correct, and I don't give a damn about my lack of etiquette. As far as I'm concerned, the world could still be flat. When they said Earth was flat, what mind search for the truth? I know you've deceived me, now here's a surprise. I could see for miles and miles. I could see for miles and miles and miles and miles and space may be
we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually. We only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go.
We are headed 3,600 miles above Earth, 15 times higher from the planet than the International Space Station. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation.
But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation.
Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
Y'all gonna love this. This is, what's the website? Everybody look at top there. All right, NASA.gov. April 1961, National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Calculation of wind compensation for launching unguided rockets. Pretty serious stuff, rocket science. Rocket science, calculating wind, right? Pretty important thing to know when you're shooting rockets. There it is again, just so you see it up close. Calculation of wind compensation for launching unguided rockets. So we're talking about rockets by Robert L. James Jr. and Ronald J. Harris, Langley Research Center, Langley, Virginia, Langley Field. I would say pretty important stuff, right? All right, technical note, here we go. Summary, method for calculating wind compensation for unguided missiles. It is derived from which has a greater degree of flexibility than previously proposed methods, blah, 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 blah. And they get into it. So they're telling you, summary, here's what we're up to. Linear aerodynamics, yes. Coefficients with respect to flow. Incidence angles are used. Launch angles for wind compensation. I mean, it's pretty serious stuff, right? I think you'd probably need to get it right. I know if I was their general or their boss, I'd say you guys better get it right. This stuff's expensive, so let's get it right. Let's look at this. It says trajectory simulation incorporating the above requirements is presented in reference 8. In addition to the above requirements, this simulation assumes a vehicle with 6 degrees of freedom and aerodynamic symmetry and roll, and the missile position, again, space will deal with that. They don't even, it's not what they're talking about. What we think, what they've told us, and what they know space is, two different things. So when they say it, they don't mean what they've lied about. The missile position in space is computed relative to a flat, non-rotating Earth.
First, I looked into the Apollo missions to the moon. Then I wondered why we hadn't been back to the moon in 45 years. I wondered why even now we didn't at least have a fleet of rovers scouring every inch of the moon, including its other side that we didn't even land on. But apparently there's a competition to get rovers on the moon. But I mean, we have a rover on Mars. Why didn't we at least send one rover up to the moon to constantly observe it, since we no longer send humans? It's just hard for me to imagine that we've already discovered and observed everything we could learn about the moon during those 3 years of Apollo missions.
But then I came across a video of Don Pettit. He's a very outspoken NASA astronaut who's been to outer space 3 times. He said this is why we haven't been back to the moon.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
Then I found out about the Van Allen radiation belt. Here's what a NASA engineer has to say about the Van Allen radiation belt.
We are headed 3,600 miles above Earth, 15 times higher from the planet than the International Space Station. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
So yeah, I found it really interesting what that NASA engineer said about the Van Allen belt. And it turns out that other NASA folks have said the same thing about leaving low Earth orbit.
Testing out on space station are definitely helping us with our goals of going beyond low Earth orbit. So we have a really robust exploration program at NASA.
And here's a quick look at the technology that we used to make it to the moon. Here's an image of the command module being rescued in the ocean. This made it to the moon and through the Van Allen belt and back to Earth. Here's video of a command module taking off from the moon. Here are some images I downloaded from NASA's website showing the module and a close-up of the technology that we sent to the moon. So yeah, I was surprised to hear about the Van Allen belt because we went to the moon 9 times and sent 12 men during the Apollo missions from December of 1968 to December of 1972. I'm kind of a detail-oriented guy, so I wanted to learn more about all this because while I'm detail-oriented, I'm also pretty cynical and extremely curious about things that don't immediately click, but I got sidetracked during my research because I came across Neil deGrasse Tyson saying something kind of weird. If you didn't know, Neil deGrasse Tyson is an astrophysicist, and he's pretty well known inside the science community. So here's what he said.
So you spin, when you spin pizza dough, it kind of flattens out. Yeah. Gets wider in the middle. And so Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning. And it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere. It's oblate. And officially it's an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it. But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above the equator.
A little chubbier.
A little chubbier. Yeah. Chubby's a good way. It's like pear-shaped.
Yeah.
I researched this statement because it didn't make sense to me. And yeah, if you watch the whole video of when he says this, he gets into sea levels and more. But I gotta tell you, he didn't mean the statement as a joke. But it still seems like a joke because who says the Earth is pear-shaped? Pretty odd, right? Either way, his statements and my research led me to download just more images and more videos from NASA's actual website. These are a few of their images of Earth that they took from space. And as I was downloading and researching photos and videos at NASA's website of our first moon landing, the Apollo 11 mission, I discovered something pretty crazy. Apparently, NASA lost the tapes that recorded data of the original Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969. The tapes included biomedical data on astronauts, video footage of the Apollo 11 landing, and all of their telemetry and engineering data. But based on everything I can research, it seems that NASA actually lost not just the Apollo 11 telemetry data, but NASA lost all of the telemetry data from all of the Apollo missions that landed on the moon. That's well over 10,000 lost tapes and over a ton, literally a ton in weight of missing tapes. Fortunately though, they were able to restore the original moon landing footage that was broadcast to Earth. I guess I just found it pretty odd when you consider that the moon landing is one of the, if not the, greatest accomplishments by mankind. Because I figured NASA would take really good care of that stuff and properly label boxes and reams of recordings. Okay, so that seemed pretty careless.
Start this by pretending that you believe everything NASA says, like so many Americans do, despite the fact that of all government agencies in existence, NASA has one of the shadiest foundings of all time. Complete with hundreds of Nazis shuffled over to America secretly after World War II in Operation Paperclip, including their star, Wernher von Braun, who got his own Disney special.
A voyage around the moon must be made in 2 phases.
And who NASA describes even today as one of the most important rocket developers and champions of space exploration in the 20th century, but who even they cannot deny was a card-carrying Nazi, member of the SS, and not only was he running the underground slave labor facility where his rockets were being built, von Braun himself would travel to a nearby concentration camp to hand-pick slaves to work for him as laborers. Even the co-founder of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory was admittedly an occultist who belonged to a cult that practiced sex orgies and black magic. And yet, that is the same NASA so many people put all of their faith and trust in, spending billions of taxpayer dollars every year to feed the American people their beliefs about everything outside of planet Earth, even though even today when their reps go in front of Congress, they can't answer the simplest questions, such as, hey, where are you guys going next?
What is our next destination for America in space?
The next destination for America in space, and I'm not being trite when I answer this, is the International Space Station. We've got to get there 4 more times this year. The long-term destination, after we successfully close out the space shuttle program, the ultimate destination is Mars. And there are intermediate points that we're going to have to get to before we are capable of going to Mars. If you gave me all the money in the federal budget today, I could not get a human to Mars. I could not morally put a human in a spacecraft and launch them on an 8-month mission to Mars because I do not understand the radiation.
All right, so what is our next destination in space?
The next ultimate destination is...
No, the next one.
Congressman, the next destination, as I said before, is the International Space Station. And
All
we've
right,
got to do
let's
that
not
one
be
more time.
trite then. What is the one after that?
It's Mars.
So there's nothing in between as far as you're concerned.
But there are intermediate stops
What are
on the way
they?
there.
What's the next one?
The moon is a destination. Lagrange points are destinations.
Which one is next?
You mean where do we go immediately next? Is that the question?
That's what next
Incremental?
means.
Maybe that's why people say NASA stands for never a straight answer. Anyway, let's go ahead and pretend, however, that we all trust and believe everything NASA says like it's golden, as if they're the most trustworthy government agency we're unable to question for some reason that has never been sufficiently explained to me, but people just get really mad when you dare to question them. Here are 2 of the most hilarious things I've ever heard come out of NASA, and by hilarious, I actually mean stupid. Mind-rapingly stupid. First of all, in the lead up to the 40th anniversary of man's supposed walk on the moon in 1969, NASA came forward with the claim that all of the Apollo 11 telemetry data was missing. And by missing, I mean erased. They came out with this report claiming that while the Apollo 11 astronauts were landing on the moon, they were sending this live to televisions all over the world. But what the world got was grainy, blurry, ghost-like footage of very low quality that was blamed on the transfer and broadcasting of these tapes to live TV, which left the whole thing looking like a third-generation photocopy. It was very poor quality. But they claimed that at NASA's tracking stations in California and Australia, the engineers there were receiving clear, crisp video on special television monitors capable of displaying their unconventional special videos. So what they were seeing was all crisp and clear, and you could see everything, but what everyone else got on live TV was really poor quality. Turns out after that broadcast, the engineers at those stations never saw those telemetry tapes ever again. This is what they claim. And they had this Herculean effort where they got all these people together, and they interviewed all these people, and they went to hunt down these tapes, and they spent 3 years trying to find out where the telemetry tapes went from what we are still today told was possibly the most monumentous thing that human beings did ever in the entire 20th century. But in their own report, they admit that aside from a few canisters of Apollo 9 telemetry tapes still stored, the Apollo-era telemetry tapes no longer exist anywhere. They're gone. That's right. But it gets better because they taped over it, and Hollywood is gonna fix it. So NASA lost their footage of landing on the moon, but Hollywood's gonna restore it. It becomes like a Three Stooges episode. As you read this article, it just gets more ridiculous. So this is the Associated Press, July 17th, 2009. NASA could put a man on the moon, but didn't have the sense to keep the original video of the live TV transmission. Oops. In an embarrassing acknowledgement, the space agency says Thursday it must have erased the Apollo 11 moon footage years ago so it could reuse the tape. That's right, so it could reuse the tape that it was on. So it isn't just that it got lost, it got purposefully erased because they needed to reuse that tape for something else that was more important than the original footage of man walking on the moon. But now Hollywood's coming to the rescue because the studio wizards who restored Casablanca are digitally sharpening and cleaning up the ghostly, grainy footage of the moon landing and making it even better than what TV viewers saw on July 20th, 1969. They claim there's nothing being created or manufactured, just it's, gonna be better because Hollywood. They go through and talk about this refurbishing effort, and they got this guy, Nafzger, who said that after the huge search began 3 years ago for the old moon tapes, they were led to the inescapable conclusion that 45 tapes of Apollo 11 video were erased and reused. The original videos beamed to Earth were stored on giant reels of tape that contained 15 minutes of video along with other data from the moon. In the 70s and 80s, however, NASA had a shortage of tapes, so it erased 200,000 of them and reused them. They had billions of dollars, but they couldn't afford some extra tapes. They just, you know how it goes. You just gotta... Nafzger, who was in charge of the live TV recording back in the Apollo years, said they were mostly thought of as data tapes, and it wasn't his job to preserve history, he said, just to make sure the footage worked. In retrospect, he said he wished NASA hadn't reused the tapes. Oh, he does he? Outside historians were aghast. It's surprising to me that NASA didn't have the common sense to save perhaps the most important historical footage of the 20th century. These are rocket scientists, right? Isn't that what people always say? What are you, a rocket scientist? Mind-boggling, the tapes just disappeared. It didn't disappear. It was erased. It was purposefully erased. So now, the people who are doing Casablanca, they're going to redo it. So anything that anyone sees will be the Hollywood magical digitally remastered version, which I'm sure we can all trust just as much as we can trust Dick Nafzger and NASA about what happened to those original telemetry tapes. That's first of all. Now let's just continue to assume everything we've been told about going to the moon is true. For some reason that again has never been sufficiently explained, no human has traveled beyond low Earth orbit since 1972, when the Apollo missions to the moon ended. That is what we are told. We're not told why, we're just told they never have. But lots of people have asked why. Why exactly is it that we went there for a few years and then never all this time have we ever returned to the moon? Well, let's leave that to Don Pettit, chemical engineer who used to be a staff scientist at Los Alamos National Lab before becoming a NASA astronaut and supposedly going on not one but 2 long-duration stays on the International Space Station. Let's hear what he has to say about why we've never been back to the moon.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again. We destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
So, in case you were wondering why it is that we've never gone back to the moon, apparently the technology that they spent billions of dollars building to get there was destroyed. For reasons that were, again, not explained.
And don't ask me how I got to eggs on Space Station.
And it's painful to build that back again, so... So that's why. I guess that's why some reason we're erasing the original telemetry tapes and we're destroying the technology to get there. So that's it. NASA erased the telemetry tapes. They erased the original tapes of the moon landing. There are no tapes. They admit in their final report, the Apollo era telemetry tapes no longer exist anywhere whatsoever. Gone forever. And for completely unexplained reasons that again will probably never be explained, just like nothing ever is, they destroyed the technology to get to the moon. And they're gonna have to build that again.
But then I stop and think, wouldn't right now be the perfect time to go back to the moon? We've made significant breakthroughs in technology in the past 45 years. So imagine today's technology that NASA could bring to the moon to record and study it. Imagine the beauty that they could show the entire world. Because we could have crystal clear, high-definition footage taken directly from the surface of the moon. I mean 4K resolution stuff that would blow everyone's minds. But instead, everyone seems to be okay with not going back. And that's despite the original video of our first ever moonwalks during the Apollo 11 mission being destroyed. And they say the original recordings, they were actually super clear and nothing like the grainy video that was broadcast to millions on television. But I guess it doesn't really matter either way, since we destroyed the technology to get back to the moon. That's if you believe what Don Pettit said. So my curiosity compelled me to keep researching all of this stuff. And a lot of what I found, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, why does it look like this flag is flapping or blowing in the wind? And this module taking off looks pretty weird to me. So yes, a lot of the moon landings and stuff surrounding outer space can come across as odd. And yeah, maybe each odd thing can be explained away. It's just that when I look at all of the oddities as a whole, it's a bit creepy. And I say creepy because someone I know and someone I love once said this stuff was creepy when they started looking into it. And all of this creepy stuff made me want to keep researching and keep asking questions. But I ended up asking one question that can get you labeled as a nutcase. It's a question that makes people laugh at you. It's a question that I bet you've already seen coming as you've been watching this video. And that question is, did we really go to the moon?
And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made from the White House. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you have done.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a great honor and privilege for us to be here.
A journey to another planet, a manned mission to Mars.
I should tell you that the first mission is scheduled to land on Mars on July the 4th, 1997, Independence Day.
We will undertake extended human missions to the moon as early as 2015, with the goal of living and working there for increasingly extended periods of time. Human missions to Mars and to worlds beyond.
But I just have to say, pretty bluntly here, we've been there before. There's a lot more of space to explore and a lot more to learn when we do. Now, last month we launched a new spacecraft as part of a re-energized space program that will send American astronauts to Mars.
We will establish a foundation for an eventual mission to Mars and perhaps someday to many worlds beyond. If we dare to dream big, and that's what our country is doing again. We're dreaming big.
You can tell it's real because it looks so fake.
Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. Let rain, oh, let rain, oh, let rain, oh, let rain. Adore. Let rain, oh, 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 let rain, and adore.
tell it's real because it looks so fake.
The moon is supposedly 238,000 miles away. It's noticeably much closer.
You went too far, you would fall off. Now the earth is round, if the shape change again, everybody would have stopped laugh. The average man can't prove up most of the things that he chooses to speak of. And still run research and find out the root of the truth that you seek of. Scholars teach in universities and claim that there's no earth and...
Party seeks power for its own sake, not as a means but an end. Power over the human mind, and because we control the mind. Reality is inside the skull, Winston. We control the laws of nature. The stars are not light years, but a few kilometers away.
So the encyclopedia says that the firmament would be 385,500 feet. We got 385,500 feet divided by 5,280 feet, which is 1 mile. This will give you how many miles it is. And it's no coincidence that it's 73. So I guess it's just another coincidence that that rocket smashed into something at 73 miles high. That was the firmament. You could hear how it hit that. It sounded just like it was hitting something strong, molten looking glass, and it sounded like it was covered by water, which is exactly what the Word of God says.
Guy who wants to prove his theory that the Earth is flat successfully launched himself into the air in a homemade rocket. Mike Hughes told the Associated Press he's sore and relieved it's over. Yesterday, he got his rocket about 1,800 feet into the sky above the Mojave Desert. Well, this morning, now he's thinking about his next project, a rocket-propelled balloon that he hopes will prove the Earth is flat. Hughes tried to launch his homemade rocket twice before, but I guess that even being sore and relieved it's over doesn't stop you from trying to do it again.
He seems determined to say the Earth is flat.
All systems are go for launch. T-minus 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I'm sorry, Jay. I'm sorry.
I could see that how that would affect your Christmas.
I made that whole thing up.
What?
I'm sorry. I guess I just wanted to seem interesting. I guess there's There's a real danger of that on this show.
There's a pressure.
Well, yeah,
yes,
people come out and they've run out of anecdotes, you know, and they just start making stuff up.
Yeah.
Like that Neil Armstrong guy. Have you seen him on the talk shows?
Neil Armstrong, you mean the first man to walk on the moon?
Talk about a fish story. Man, and they're buying it.
Oh, yeah.
I started looking into other info and footage surrounding outer space, and I found some interesting things there too. This is Gemini 4 that was completed in June of 1965. That was well before the Apollo 11 mission. This is the first American spacewalk recorded using an 18mm lens camera, and it recorded at 6 frames per second. But straight up, this looks like stop motion video to me. Back to what's odd. And it's that I can't find any other video of astronauts turning their helmets. A turning helmet appears to be only happening during this first ever spacewalk. Because the thing is that my research showed that the helmets couldn't turn or swivel because they're fixed to an airtight ring base. And once the suit is pressurized, it all becomes extremely stiff. And I don't see the helmet turning again in any of the video for this spacewalk or any others. But there's a lot of footage available that's been taken from the International Space Station, the ISS. This is it here. Of course, a lot of live interviews and videos have been done and recorded from the ISS, and that's resulted in a lot of footage to look at. First, and this one's just kind of really funny to me, it turns out that there's a lot of weird-looking hair on the space station. It's like the hair is gelled or hairsprayed up, like straight up, and it's not supposed to move. Why not just let it flow and showcase its weightlessness? Maybe it would get in the way, but there are also ponytails and such, right?
You look like you're in a studio, maybe in Omaha, Nebraska or something. The shot is so clear. Is this a hoax? Are you really in space still? See the hair?
Okay, this is a good place to freeze for a moment and transition, because things go from questioning weird hair to deeper levels of strange.
See the hair?
I don't know, we're gonna have to do something for you.
Oh yeah, I can do that. Watch this.
It looks like this guy is grabbing a wire attached to the guy next to him. He's not grabbing air, and there is no reason why any of these guys would be wearing wires in space. Someone I know wondered that when I showed them this video. Believe me, you're going to be just like the person I talked to, because you will look for answers. You will look for ways to rationalize these things that I show you. Just understand I've asked the same questions. Why, how, and what am I really seeing? This guy with the red shirt looks like his shirt is being pulled by a wire. There are lots of these instances out there that you can research, but it's not exclusive to the ISS. It also happened on the moon itself, and I'll show you that in a moment. But look at the guy in the middle of these men. He looks like he's actually wearing a harness. This was a live interview with Boise State, and look at how awkward this is. Look at this astronaut who turns with his back to us. Pay attention to his back heels. It seems like there may not be enough slack, so his heels stay off the ground. Okay, maybe that's hard for you to believe or see, but look at this awkwardness. This astronaut looks like he's being yanked up by a cable. So how does he get up like this on his own? I mean, the other astronaut did not pull him, but it looks like he was lifted by some external force outside of him, and it's not the guy next to him. Straight up, it appears that these astronauts are attached to cables or some kind of harnesses at times, because it pulls the astronauts in unnatural ways. It even prevents them from falling all the way down. Sometimes they look like puppets on strings, due to the way that they're being pulled or moved along. But how else could they be doing this? Well, it could be more special effects, and likely something called augmented reality and or green screens. And this is what it looks like. This is an actual video that NASA did. They meant to do this. This is an example of augmented reality. And then there are chroma key screens. So outside of green screens, there are also blue screens. And that's what you're seeing right here. You're seeing the former president being pushed through this NASA area, and behind him is Tim Peake, an astronaut, with what looks like a blue screen, a chroma key screen right behind him. And do you see the green ball? I mean, we can compare footage around that same time compared to what was caught on camera, and you can see it's the same background. It looks like the same deal. And I've only ever found one other video that's ever shown this same checkered blue screen. This is that one other video that I'm showing you right here. But how coincidental is it that they use this blue checkered background, which is extremely similar to ORAD virtual set technology? I mean, this is the kind of stuff you can do on a budget right here, this video. Now here's something else from the ISS. Look at this card floating. This is directly from NASA's YouTube channel. This card, it just doesn't look real. Is there an air conditioner on up there? I mean, look at it. It looks like they're doing everything they can not to laugh. Next, people say that the spacewalks may have been recorded underwater and not on the moon at all. Because, as you can see here, astronauts are definitely trained underwater. So a lot of folks believe that they may have faked the spacewalks by doing it underwater as well. And that seems to make a lot of sense when you study a lot of the spacewalk videos, because you're going to see what looks like a lot of bubbles going all these different directions. Who knows which direction the camera was actually pointing when these were recorded, but they look like air bubbles escaping maybe from underwater pools where some of these things were recorded or faked. Last, there are zero gravity planes.
The only way right now that we can simulate the gravity on Moon, Mars, asteroids is parabolic flight.
So yeah, there is likely hours of video of real weightlessness that people have experienced. But you can't do that all the time, so there needs to be other options, especially for the longer videos, like I showed before. Okay, this is a time-lapse video of Earth recorded from the ISS. But I want to step off the space station right now. I want to look at the Apollo 11 crew's first public appearance after returning from the moon.
It was our pleasure to have participated in one great adventure. It's an adventure that took place not just in the month of July, but rather one that took place in the last decade. We all here and the people listening in today had the opportunity to share that adventure over its developing and unfolding in the past months and years. It's our privilege today to share with you some of the details of that final month of July that was certainly the highlight for the three of us of that decade.
So a lot of people question that video and the emotions that they showed at this press conference, especially Neil Armstrong, who was in the middle. But yeah, it looks like maybe they were impacted by being on the moon. That could be a significant moment. Just as a heads up, this news conference occurred on September 16th, 1969, and these astronauts returned to Earth on July 24th, 1969. So yeah, it's less than 2 months for them to get their bearings, but it turns out that they did forget a lot in that short time frame.
When you looked up at the sky, could you actually see the stars and the solar corona in spite of the glare?
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optics. I don't recall during the period of time that we were photographing the solar corona what stars we could see.
I can't imagine that he was debriefed and that kind of question wasn't asked. What he saw, what he felt, what he experienced while on the moon. And now listen to Mike Collins, who was sitting to the left of Neil Armstrong.
I don't remember seeing any.
Neil, you were a little bit concerned, you said about...
So now Mike doesn't remember seeing any stars either. We have to remember that the reporter asked about them looking up at the sky and if they could see the stars based on the circumstances. So Mike Collins' answer has got to apply to his experience in the command module itself because he didn't walk on the moon or go down to its surface. But let's look again at Neil's response to what Mike said.
I don't remember seeing any.
Neil, you were a little bit concerned, you said about...
Notice his body language, and it looks like Neil even whispers something under his breath to Mike. Was he telling him to simply shut up? I don't know, but the interaction looks really odd to me. Alright, here is another interview with Neil Armstrong. And right after I show you this quick piece, I'll immediately share a few more statements made by other astronauts who shared what they could or couldn't see while in outer space.
Mr. Armstrong, I do realize that when you were on the moon, you had very little time for gazing upwards. But could you tell us something about what the sky actually looks like from the moon? The sun, the earth, the stars, if any, and so on?
The sky is a deep black when viewed from the moon, as it is when viewed from cislunar space, the space between the Earth and the moon. The Earth is the only visible object other than the sun that can be seen, although there have been some reports of seeing planets. I myself did not see planets from the surface, but I suspect they might be visible.
Whilst
From
in
Mark
space,
Cameron. This is from Mark Cameron.
Whilst in space, have you ever looked away from Earth into the black void?
Yeah.
All
because
the
you can
time.
see. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because you can see the stars.
Oh, yeah,
And,
yeah.
You know, and pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
The sky is a deep black when viewed from the moon, as it is when viewed from cislunar space, the space between the Earth and the moon.
space and you're on the sun side of the orbit, the sunlight washes out all the starlight, so you can't see any stars, just like here on Earth.
There's all the stars there, and the cool thing is about it, you can see it during the day.
Yeah, you can, and there's more than stars. You can see planets. You can
Right.
see moons.
You see the gas Magellan clouds of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Milky
you
Way
see the
galaxy.
Magellan.
Pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
Then when you look out into deep space away from the sun, it's the darkest black you can imagine.
So this black space you're looking at on your screen right now could or couldn't be what you see when viewing outer space from outer space. I guess you have to go to outer space or walk on the moon to confirm this truth for yourself. But I'm going to stay focused on the objects in outer space because I want to ask why the images of stars and planets taken by satellites in space look so different to what I actually observe with my camera. Here's Venus again, as seen through my Nikon P900. Here's Arcturus again. Here's Vega again. Here's another star, Antares. It looks pretty cool too. I showed you my online research earlier, except I can't find any video of these amazing stars or planets that were taken by NASA. Now we're looking at NASA's website. From 1 million miles away, NASA camera shows moon crossing face of Earth. It says a NASA camera aboard the Deep Space Climate Observatory Discover captured a unique view of the moon as it moved in front of the sunlit side of the Earth last month. The series of test images shows the fully illuminated dark side of the moon that is never visible from Earth. The images were captured by NASA's Earth Polychromatic Imaging Camera, EPIC, a 4-megapixel CCD camera and telescope on the Discover satellite orbiting 1 million miles from Earth. First off, that looks very similar to the same side of the moon that I look at. Be interested to know if it's identical. But here below it says this animation features actual satellite images of the far side of the moon, illuminated by the sun, as it crosses between the Discover spacecraft's Earth Polychromatic Imaging Camera EPIC and telescope. This is supposed to be the moon passing the Earth from 1 million miles away. So yes, at the same time, I'm criticizing and thinking that their video, their animation doesn't even look real. But I'm also still wondering why we just don't have more videos by NASA of outer space itself. But there are some recordings out there. There's the Cassini spacecraft out there near Saturn that recently plunged into Saturn. And then there is the Juno spacecraft observing Jupiter. But I'm sorry, all of these look like CGI images to me. They just don't look real. So these spacecraft are satellites, right? What about satellites in general? I looked up satellites online, and the satellites are all CGI, or fake-looking images, when I search them. That doesn't prove anything, but it's another place where primarily CGI images are found when you start researching this kind of stuff. And I do think there's a lot more CGI out there, because there's more stuff that just doesn't seem right when you start looking into it. Like the SpaceX missions. These are landings recorded by SpaceX and published by them. This is CRS-6. This is CRS-8. This is CRS-10. This is CRS-11. Again, this just doesn't look real to me. And how can a rocket steer a landing like this? These rockets are like huge, massive, heavy sticks, except they can rocket to the ground in reverse. They can take off right, re-enter, flip around, and come to the ground in reverse and land with this kind of crazy precision using these tiny little fins. They're not even fins. They don't have wings. So yeah, this is a lot that I'm showing you, a lot that I'm asking you to question. But that's because there's a rabbit hole of random things that just don't make sense. And they don't look real.
But going to Mars should be one of the next series of steps that humans do. The first step should be going back to the moon for a number of technical reasons and exploration reasons, and then after that, Mars, maybe high orbit in Venus atmosphere, maybe going to Europa. There's all kinds of targets to go to, places of interest in our solar system. The only limit to human future is in our own imagination.
Without GoPro or fisheye lens, when I send a balloon up 100,000 feet and it shows the horizon flat, I can't go against that. When I see skylines 60 to 100 miles away, when spherical geometry says they should be behind the curve, all this stuff isn't adding up.
Joshua Nowicki, and what you're seeing here is a mirage. We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage of the Chicago skyline.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I say, continue to believe pathological liars and you're an idiot.
By the way, how much money is being spent on space? You should emblazon this in your head. Here it goes. This is the pie chart. $330 billion a year is spent on space. Spent on space. Spent on space.
There just seems to be so many questionable circumstances involving NASA. And yeah, this next one, I'm talking about the Space Shuttle Challenger of 1986 that exploded soon after takeoff. And please know that I'm taking this one carefully but seriously, because this one involves life and death. I just believe there are enough intriguing questions about the crew members on that exploding ship to touch on it here. Because 6 of the 7 crew members are considered alive by many people today, because there are 6 people living in the United States who closely resemble 6 original crew members from Challenger. The Challenger's commander was Francis Richard Scobie. Today there's a Richard Scobie who is CEO of a Chicago marketing company. These guys have some eerily similar features, like the same kind of wide-set eyes that both seem to be tilted in their corners. The pilot was Michael J. Smith, and there's another Michael J. Smith living today, a professor, and they seem to look the same. Same smiles, it looks like the same teeth inside those smiles, both have blue eyes, and more. One of the mission specialists was Ronald McNair. It turns out that he has a brother named Carl, who's living today, and they look like they could be twin brothers. Another mission specialist was Ellison Onizuka. He also has a lookalike brother still alive today, and his brother's name is Claude. Another mission specialist was Judith Resnick, and there's a Yale law professor with similar features and identical name living today. And then there was the teacher Sharon Krista McAuliffe. Well, there is a Syracuse professor named Sharon A. McAuliffe who looks a lot like the original crew member with the same first name and last name. Again, I do not take sharing this information lightly, because it is a serious thing when you question if people may have really died. So I don't know about this for sure. I just know that the odds seem pretty crazy that 6 of the 7 crew members have people living today with appropriately similar ages, nearly identical names, and strikingly similar features. And what about the fact that we're now planning to send humans to Mars, and we want to colonize it? So forget about inhabiting the moon, which would be way easier because it's way closer, and we've already put people on the moon, but instead let's go inhabit Mars, which is much further away and way harder to get to. So everything I've shared so far, to me it's really bizarre and odd. Much of it doesn't add up, if you ask me, but still, many of you will find explanations. There's a lot of info out there, but based on what my eyes have seen, based on using my own personal logic, even if I wanted to eliminate half of the things I just showed you as untrue, I simply can't explain away the other half as untrue, because there is too much that just doesn't make sense in my head.
Why don't you just put the end to the record in the argument and put your hand on the Bible, swear to God you walked on the moon. Mr. Several, knowing you, that's probably a fake Bible.
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Why don't you talk to the administrator at NASA? We're passengers. We're guys going on a flight. I don't hit people, but you're going to be on the deck unless you get I appreciate it. Get the hell out of the house. Well, take your stuff and get the fuck out. Why don't you quote me and say it's bullshit?
The shadows in Iraq. I don't give a damn about all that shit.
You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself. Get away from me. You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
And again, like I stated before, when you see a rainbow after it's done raining and the sky clears, what you get here are these water beads that act like a mirror that get a reflection from the dome that is above us. More of the same. That's a reflection. Again, the water acting as a mirror, a reflection of the dome above us.
But after looking over all of the information and evidence surrounding our explorations into outer space, the moon landings, and what science teaches me about it all, based on what I can actually observe and prove myself, I'm now at the point where I don't believe we ever went to the moon. I don't believe we've gone to outer space in the way that they tell us. I don't believe an International Space Station is orbiting the Earth. I don't believe it's possible. And there are many more extremely compelling reasons why I believe this, beyond the limited information that I've presented so far here. You may be laughing at me right now, or wondering when Dave lost his mind and went full conspiracy theorist. I used to think that it was crazy before I started researching all of this. But what if it was possible? What if what you've been told was not the truth? Or maybe it was full of half-truths? Would it be the first time that someone lied to you? Would it be the first time that your government lied to you? It's easy for me to say that, especially when you may be thinking the opposite. But no matter what, we barely touched the first layer of how odd and bizarre things may really be.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.